Hi, my name is Amber Case. I'm the author of Calm Technology. I've been a speaker for the last 10 years and a user experience designer. I like to think about the world at large in long periods of time, understanding how humans interact with technology and how technology affects culture. I think, of course, with this virus, we have been reminded of our human nature. It's not that we can just fly around the world and pack in so many flights and so many schedules. Before this time, I saw people working harder than they ever had before. And I'd like to ask them, were they really doing anything? Was that meeting necessary? Was that new production necessary? What was really meaningful to a company? Every additional item that you add costs money. And after this, I think it's a really interesting time because we're stopping. We have to think, we have to slow down. And in this slowness, we can come up with the seeds of all of the new ideas if we wanted to. We can re-go into our imaginations. I think one of the most important things to think about is this Greek concept of time, the idea of chronos time and kairos time. Chronos time is that industrial time that we spent so much time in, the idea of a 9 to 5 day, or a meeting that's only a certain amount of time, or rushing to a coffee appointment with somebody who you don't even really need to meet. Then there's the idea of kairos time. Kairos time is looking out the window when it's raining, having nothing to do. It's also the eureka moment when you say, wait a second, why do we even need that pricing model to be that way? But that happens to you on a train on the way to a conference in another country and not when you're sitting in front of your desk. It's the time in which you forget that you're doing anything at all because you're in the middle of cooking or listening to a podcast and you can't get out of your car because the podcast is so good and it's live on BBC and you're not getting out of your car because you have to listen to the rest. That's Kairos time. And I think right now, even though we're clinging to Chronos time, we keep wanting to go into this Kairos time. This is our human time. The innovations that will be made out of this because of the different ways that we're thinking, because people are using tools in ways that they aren't supposed to be used or they were never built to be used for, like Zoom, is going to usher in a new era of creativity, a new era of business, and a new era of just imagination that we've never seen before. This is the time for the introverts. This is the time for the quiet people. This is the time for connecting without being dressed up, connecting where kids are running across the background and really remembering what's important. It is always possible to predict multiple futures. There's no one future. Right now, all of the things that we're seeing will continue to grow. We will see all of the seeds that were planted in Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 and Web 3.0. And by Web 1.0, I mean pets.com didn't make any money, but in Web 2.0, it made lots of money. We will see um, a movement towards no code, the no code movement, where people are focused on just getting things done and not getting mired down in all of this random code, about people making solutions for themselves so that they can work as an entire company of one. We're going to see fragmentation along the boundaries of all these different offices, that maybe we didn't need to have this office. How much time in an office is actually spent doing something? But we will need to remember that you can't just be on a Zoom meeting all day, that we actually need to have some time to get work done. There's a lot of different shifts that are going to happen, but we're already seeing in every era the seeds of consumer behavior. It's very much the same as it was before. You have to connect with people, you have to make them feel like they belong, you have to give them something that they need, and you need to meet them where they are. If you can create a community of people, then you've got something amazing. And if you can't and you don't listen to them, then you just end up spending a lot of marketing money and you'll eventually die. So the principles, no matter what the season is, because this is a kind of season, no matter what the tides are, is always the same. The question of how you get to them might not necessarily be a retail experience, but I wouldn't limit to looking at specific tools that you think are cool, like VR and AR are just a trend. They've been around since the 60s. They have never caught on. One of the reasons why they may not ever catch on really is because they're hard to build with. They don't work with the imagination like a book does. They develop too much for you and you end up just having no memory, like watching a movie where there's so much action and so much music that you don't remember it at all, versus a film where there's some silence, there's some introspection that you can take away something from it. My recommendation for brands in moments of change is to always support your people. Anticipate that when things are going very, very well, that there will be a downturn, and always keep some cash reserves and ask yourself why you're expanding, so that when there is a downturn, you have something saved up, you have some safety. Always have a laser sharp vision. Do not try to go into other areas that you're not very good at just because there's a trend. For instance, if you absolutely have to go into blockchain, make sure that there's a reason for why you're doing it versus just hopping on a train. There is a late mover advantage to all of this. As everything changes, you can watch other people's strategies and adapt them to your business. So a lot of it is being calm, working with a kind of calm technology mindset, and moving a little bit more slowly while focusing on your assets, which are people and community. There's going to be a lot more room for high quality premium brands and things that hold you as you go forward during uncertainty. A lot of people are building businesses with the idea that it will go well. Think about how Zappos built a business with the idea that you would hate the shoes that you got online and return them, but made the experience delightful. How can we make delightful experiences when things invariably fail, so that when things go bad, people are entertained, people are supported, people are in love? There are ways to just flip these equations and flip these maps and map out these territories so that you're not certain, but you are clear. And that clarity can really help drive how things go forward for your company and your community in the future. I've actually talked to people who've run vertical farms inside old hotels. You can do vertical farming. It's a lot cheaper. You don't need as much soil. You don't need as much land. You don't need any pesticides. You can work with fish. Um, but for the restaurant industry, it's been really hard because they're not buying from the distributors anymore. So one of the first things I did during this crisis is just call up a restaurant distributor and buy direct from them, and tell my community to buy direct from them as well. Of course, when things start back up, we will probably get a roaring 20s and people will get really excited to go out and eat again and party with each other. So I don't think there's a real threat. But right now, food supply chains could learn that the margins are very low on everything. Everything is very dicey. But to pack in some resilience, to pack in networks of local resources as well as global resources, and go towards a little bit more of a sovereign situation where you're not reliant on a random avocado shortage. Also, going towards some more seasonal ideas. There are many restaurants at the high end who already work this way. Why are you working with things that aren't seasonal? Because everybody expects to have everything year round? Wouldn't it be lovely if we celebrated strawberries once a year with a strawberry festival? Wouldn't that lead to more connections in the community? Thinking more about that, thinking more agriculturally, historically, can really help us to understand what the future will bring, because we're going a little bit back in time as we go away from an era that's been so globally connected and so cheap because of that. The thing I think we should be looking forward to in the future is not assuming that just because something exists, that it's the whole world. We think Facebook is the only social network along with Instagram, which is the same thing, or that LinkedIn is a place for jobs. But we forget that 20 years ago, many people ran their own forums. Many people ran their own social networks. People had their own websites. That a lot of these sites like Neopets taught people how to code HTML and turn them into the first early web developers. That LiveJournal taught people how to be young adult fiction writers. That the interfaces in the past were much smaller, easier to maintain, weren't filled with ads because it wasn't necessary, and they were done at human scale. Everything is up for change. And the thing in an emergency is you can make massive changes in an industry. This is the time to enter a crowded field. This is the time to invest in research and development. This is the time to be very clever about productization because everybody is afraid. And to work with that and to not be fearful and to say, what are the human universals that are always needed? And work to that North Star changes how we can interact with the world, not out of panic, but out of steering a ship. It's a little bit choppy right now. There's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of pain, but we're going to get through it. And thank goodness that we are reminded that we are human, because I think a lot of us were way too busy before this. And even though it's really annoying for some of us with kids and dogs and things like that, that we get to have this kind of special deep time to really consider what we want to be as a human race. There's a lot of opportunities to go deep and just make wonderful things that can be very successful and be classics. I would focus on what can you make that will become a classic? What kind of design do you need to bring to that? What kind of people do you need to bring to that? Don't just panic. You know? Think deeply. You'll be just fine.